Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to make money with positive expected value betting, what it is, how I use it, tips and tricks, and as always, I'm going to be using the OddsJam tool, which has helped me make over $22,000 sports betting. And in the description, there's going to be a link that's going to give you a week-long free trial. Now getting into it, what is positive expected value betting? Sounds like a big word, sounds complex, but it's really not. Basically is when a sportsbook has odds that are completely different from the rest of the market, which is going to give you a long-term edge. And if you don't understand how odds work, I'll make sure to have that link to a video where I talk about odds. But essentially, with these odds being completely different from the rest of the market, you're getting paid more on a win than is expected to occur. So if the rest of the market has the odds price where that team should be winning 60% of the time, and another sportsbook has odds that are completely different where it's paying you where it would be pricing in a 50% win, you're gonna be getting paid way more. Now if we look at how this goes, we're gonna go to the positive expected value page, and I'm going to just click for all Virginia books. And on here, we're going to be able to see what a positive expected value bet looks like. Right, so right here, the rest of the market has it all in the negatives as a favored outcome that Isaiah Joe is going to have under 3.5 rebounds. Versus here on SportsZeno, they have him priced as an underdog that he probably is not going to hit on that bet. So with this bet, for every $100 you bet in the long term, you're going to be making a 15% profit. So essentially $15 in the long run. And the reason why is because let's say you took this bet here on BetMGM, right? You're having to bet $120 to only win $100 versus here on SportsZeno for the same event, you're betting $100 and you're going to be winning $110. So in the long run, that's going to give you an edge. So the easiest way to explain how positive EV betting is we are not predicting the outcome of what's going to happen. Essentially, we don't have a magic crystal ball that says, oh, Isaiah Joe is always going to finish with under 3.5 rebounds. We are just saying mathematically long term, the rest of the market has it priced at. He's going to have that happen at minus 125, which if we go to right here, right? The rest of the market is pricing in that he's going to have under 3.5 rebounds 55% of the time. But on SportsZeno, they're pricing in that he's only going to do that 47.6% of the time. So the easiest analogy for what positive expected value betting is it's like counting cards at the blackjack table. It gives you a small, minuscule, like 1 to 2% edge over the casino if you know how to count cards in blackjack. While with positive expected value betting for sports betting, because the odds are so different and all over the place, you're getting a 15% edge on this bet. Now if we refresh it, not there anymore. But this bet here that I've already made, because look at how much different, right? Market is pretty tight, right around between 100 and 106. And then we had DraftKings way off at 155. So I went ahead and placed this bet already because it's giving me a 15% edge, which is huge, way better than card counting at the blackjack table. But that's essentially what it is, very similar ideals. A better way to visualize how positive expected value betting is going to lead to profits in the long run, even though you're not predicting the outcome necessarily, you're just playing the mathematical odds, is if I pull up my picket from last year. Now, as you can see on the screen, I made close to $13,000 last year at roughly a 4.5% ROI. But if you can see, if I just scroll through it, right, steadily goes up, there's some dips, right, goes down for a while. Roughly, was that like a couple months, right? And then it just shoots up, drops down quite a bit. So it's going to be similar to the stock market almost, where generally it's going to go up. You're going to have down days. If I go to this year, you can see it's all over the place. At one point, I was up almost 5.5%. Now I'm showing at only 0.46%, right? There's some big jumps, and there's also some big drops in there. That's what's going to happen is sometimes, right, if I go by month, April, not so good of a start. March, not so good. February, pretty solid. And March was actually, if I go back to it, the first ever down month that I've ever had. But still, if I go $650 down, looks like a lot, but I'm still up $348 for the year. And I'm still expecting to do pretty solid compared to last year. So don't be discouraged when it comes to positive EV betting because you're going to have a lot of down days. but the good days are going to drastically outweigh the down days. Okay, so now that you know what positive expected value betting is, and you know what to, no pun intended, expect from it, I'm going to go over the settings I have for this page, what I look for, different tips and tricks. So to begin with, I'm going to go up here to my filters button, right? You can pretty much filter it down, right? This is an international book, so I don't use that. Anything that unlimited, I would take off. I'm going to keep everything on just for example, right? Minimum, maximum odds. Now, this is all up to personal discretion. I don't have any minimum odds set. I do have a maximum of 200. Some people have no maximum. Some people have a maximum of 150. The reason why I keep it at 200 is because cases like this where it's a bet of 155, right? The rest of the market is not pricing it in here at 155. They're more pricing it around 105, I would say. But here, DraftKings is way off and has it at 155. Now, if you had your filters at 150 or let's say 125 or something, this wouldn't even pop up. So that's why I keep it at 200. If we go and pull up this 165, you can see, right, probably between 110 and 114 would be normal odds. So for that reason, I keep it at 200, but it's all going to come down to your risk tolerance. Minimum percentage, I don't have one manually on here. I have one in my mind. I keep it at 3%, but I could easily do 3% minimum. And you see it's just going to filter out any result that's below 3%. The reason why I don't even have one is just because there's so many bets above it that there's no reason to focus on just adding an extra filter. If I want to sports, again, I'll trade anything, leagues, any markets. I will say for player props, what you want to be wary of when you have a bet size, depending on what you choose to bet, do not put more than $200 on a player prop. And I have that same word of advice for my arbitrage bet page. It applies more so to there than here. But you don't want to put more than $200 on a player prop because you want to appear as a normal gambler. Date range, you can do pretty much any date. I have it set for 7 days if you wanted to. And this is going to be my first tip, is if you want to get your money back so that you can keep reinvesting it on the daily, you could do it for today. So that way, now it's pretty late, it's 10 o'clock, this is the only game that's left, is going to be this. But you can filter it to where it's just today's games, right? So that this bet is either going to win or lose. If it wins, I have my money. I can reinvest it into another positive EV bet tomorrow. Or let's say it was an afternoon game. I could reinvest it in a night game once the afternoon game has settled. Now, when you do just for the today or 24-hour range, that might be when you want to add your filter for like 3% or 2%, whatever you have, because then you start having these tiny bets. But again, I like to keep it for 7 days just because then it will give me access to these ones that are way off. Again, if you wanted to, you could search for a specific game. You can see recent ones that I have searched for. Market width. So market width here is pretty important. So I'm going to go over the definition of it and the next thing I'm going to pull up. So the width is going to be the difference between the odds in a market. So right, if I go and check out this one, it has a market width of 32, right? The market is pretty close together except for DraftKings. And then if we go here to one that's at 55, it's saying that there's a lot of variation between the market, right? There's 167, there's 230. If we go to this one at 50 market width, it's going to range between 145 and 103 or minus 103. That one's at positive 106. And then if we go back to here's one at 26, there's going to be two are at positive 120, one's at minus 125, one's at minus 117. It's a little tighter here. Essentially, market width is describing how tight the market is. Now, a lot of people have their settings a lot tighter. The reason why I keep mine kind of wide at 75 is because I'm okay with a result that would be normally out of the mean, right? This one at 230, 55 market width. Now, I wouldn't take this because it's above my 200, but it's pricing in the average odds here at 196. But something like this, right? It's 50, 145. I'm going to say that this is kind of tight. So I'm kind of like not relying as much on a computer to tell me what to do. I'm more visualizing it. These are only roughly 9 points in difference. So I would take that one in my opinion, but other people wouldn't if they have the filter at, let's say, 40 because it wouldn't pop up. So I'm okay with it being a little wider just because sometimes that one that is very extreme will pop up as being wide. The next one that you're going to need to know is a Kelly multiplier, which is going to determine your risk level for your bankroll management. So if I go towards this bet size right here, it's going to take you to this screen. You could input your bankroll. My bankroll is way higher, but I like to keep it at that so that the bets are normalized. A lot of people will typically have their Kelly multiplier either be between 0.25 and 0.5. Now if I go and save those changes and go back to the positive EV page, it's telling me to put way more money, 190, on this bet than if I go ahead and go back to it and go towards 0.25. Save changes, go towards positive EV, and now it's saying to bet only 100 on the exact same bet. So the Kelly multiplier, if we go back to it, the lower this number is, the less risk tolerance you have, right? It's going to have you put less money on a bet versus the closer to 1 you get, the more risk tolerance you have. So if you're a person that has a lot of risk tolerance, I would put it at 0.5. If you're someone that doesn't have as much risk tolerance, I recommend 0.25. That's what I do. But if we look at how the Kelly multiplier works, what it is doing, it's taking the percent EV, so in this case 15%, and then it's also including your bankroll, which in the case I had 4,000, and then it's also looking at the odds, plus 155. Now this one that's right below it has a slightly less EV. The odds are giving it a less likelihood of hitting, right? 45.1% for the market compared to 43%. But DraftKings is giving it 37 versus 39. So because it's less likely to hit and the EV isn't as high, it's telling you for this bet to put less money on it than this one. And then another case, this one's at 12%, but the odds are only at 120. So even if you're going just by DraftKings odds, which are off compared to the rest of the market, it's still got a 45% chance of hitting, so way higher than this 39%. So because of that, it's still recommending you put $100 on this bet with a $4,000 bankroll and a 0.25 Kelly multiplier. Again, Kelly multiplier, you can adjust it by just going to that, and it's all personal preference. That's what you're going to realize for positive EV betting compared to, say, arbitrage betting, is it is a lot more up to your user interpretation. All these different settings, what works for you. It worked for me. I made over $12,000 last year on positive EV betting. You might choose filters that give you a higher percent return. It comes down to personal preference. So for this next part, I'm going to go into the different tips that I have for positive EV betting. The first one is going to be bankroll management, which going back to the Kelly multiplier part that we had, $4,000 bankroll. You could adjust your bankroll on the daily. I recommend keeping it consistent at least for an entire month before you change it. So let's say you were profitable for the month, you made $2,000, but let's say you made $400 in one day. Rather than adjusting it to $4,400 tomorrow, I would wait till the month is over because you don't want to win on one day, then it's jumping your bet size, and then your bets are increased, and then because of that, then you lose tomorrow. You have a red day because it does happen with positive EV betting, and then you lost way more, and now you're down to a lower bankroll than 4,000. So I recommend keeping the bankroll consistent for an entire month before adjusting it. On top of that, you're going to want to follow either two different ways to make your bets. You either want to follow the bet size that's recommending for Kelly Criterion, or what I switched to. Originally I started off with Kelly Criterion, but I found that it worked better for me is if you have unit sizes. So for me, what I did was anything plus 115 and above, I switched to doing $30 bets. Anything between minus 115 and plus 115, I did $40 bets as a unit. And then anything below minus 115, I did $50 units. Again, it's all up to personal discretion. You can make your units bigger, you can make your units smaller, but those are the two methods. You could either use the Kelly Criterion that's sizing it for the bet odds and EV, or you could just use strictly unit size betting. I switched to unit size betting just because it made my wins and losses more consistent rather than whipsawing back and forth. Now, my next tip when deciding to make a bet or not is going to be to compare the bet to other sharp sports books and to also make sure that there are multiple books that is being compared to. Like for this, there's not a ton of other books to compare it to, right? Still not a bad bet to take. But if I go and change it to today, because there's going to be a lot more interest on it, if I go and look at this bet on Bet365, there is a lot more books. So I am getting a lot more data on if this bet is different from the rest of the market. And the two smart books that I like to compare to are Fanduel, is usually real smart, and Pinnacle. It might just be no bets for Pinnacle. Oh, there we go. See, there's Fanduel and Pinnacle. This bet plus 100, completely different, minus 125, minus 125. Those are the two that I would, in my personal opinion, tend to be right the most. So if a book is different compared to those two, I'm taking that bet no matter what. Unless, in case, this leads me to my next tip, if it's saying it's positive EV and there's two books that had the exact same odds. Now BetMGM, their odds are usually off. Hard Rock, their odds are definitely usually off. So you could take that as a sign as it's just two off books being off. But me personally, when I make a positive EV bet, I like to make sure that mine is the sole book by at least 5, generally 10 points, because that means I'm getting a really good deal. My next tip is really important, and it's going to help you a lot to stabilize your wins and losses, is don't overexpose yourself to one event or game, right? In this case, I have the settings towards today. For bets, there's only one game left for today. I wouldn't go and take bets left and right, even though it's different players, right? I'm not going to take him under 12.5, for a 6% positive EV bet. I'm not going to take him for over 14.5 points for 6%. And then him at over 24.5, right? Even though these are all good bets, I would limit it to a max of 2, maybe 3 bets that are for the same game. And I would make sure that if I am choosing a bet, it's not going to be bets that conflict with each other, right? If I'm choosing him to go under 12.5 rebounds, and then let's say there was another bet, let's say this one was for Zubat to go over 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists, right? Well, you chose him to go under rebounds on here, but then on here you'd be choosing him to go over points plus rebounds plus assist. So you don't want to be choosing conflicting bets, and you don't want to have too many bets in the exact same game, because it leads to overexposure. And what tends to happen is you'll either win a bunch on that one game or you'll lose a bunch on that one game. And in my experience, when you lose a bunch on one game, it tends to be a lot bigger than the wins on one game. So you really want to limit your exposure. So if I go back to and just change it towards the next 7 days, you can see I already have this one bet here on Fulham FC. I'm probably not going to make another bet on here because most of the soccer bets are either shots, tackles, or shots on target. I would limit my bet for soccer to just one per game. There's another one right here, player shots, right? I could do this one. Again, he's off from the rest of the market, right? That is a bet that's going to win. But if both of these guys don't hit and I made a $100 bet and a $90 bet, I've lost both bets, which would really suck. So I'm happy enough with, hey, I took this one bet. Now, it doesn't mean when doing this, don't get volume down. And this is another tip. The more bets you make, the less volatile your wins and losses are going to be, and the more money that you're going to make. So just looking at this screen, there's a lot of different bets on here. Just scrolling, right? We're even back down to today's basketball. So there's a lot of bets you can make, but you just want to limit your amount of bets on one game. My next tip, I already mentioned this earlier, be selective on the bets you make. I don't have a minimum percentage applied, but I know in my head I'm not taking anything below 3%, which is all the way down here if I look at all the games rather than just for today. This one just popped up at 30%, right? That one's way off from the rest of the market. But be selective in the bets that you actually take, because if you're putting down $100 bets on something that has a 1% edge versus like you could make this $100 bet on something that has a 15% edge, in the long run, you're going to make more money. And odds are you probably don't have unlimited money, right? I've made $22,000 sports betting. I still don't have an unlimited bankroll. I use a bankroll of less than $10,000 on here, right? So if I made 1,000 bets, but I used all my money previously on 1% bets, and then this 30% bet that popped up, and we'll see it's not even there anymore because it was so off from the rest of the market, right? It already adjusted. But I wouldn't have been able to even place this bet because I had used up all my money. So you want to be selective in your bets. You want to make sure that it is different from the rest of the market and that it does have a high percentage of EV. My next tip is if you have both a Ballybet and Bet Rivers in your state, you only want to be placing your bets on Bet Rivers. And the reason why is because Ballybet and Bet Rivers both share the exact same odds maker for determining their odds. And if you get limited on one, you're going to be limited on the other. The main difference here is Bet Rivers is a way bigger casino and sportsbook than Ballybet is. So you're going to be able to get more money in and more money in long term than if you place your money on Ballybet. And it would really suck if you're getting less action down on odds that are way off on Ballybet and then you get limited on both when you could have been placing way more bets and for a longer period of time on Bet Rivers. My next tip is, while being selective with which EV bets you want to choose, there is kind of a max that you want to keep, right? This 30% one we looked at earlier already adjusted down and is not there. But when it is that high of a percent, you typically want to avoid those because that's going to get you limited real quick on a book, which is going to limit your earning potential. So it's better to take a smaller percent EV, right? 15% versus 30%. If you're going to be able to bet on this book for an additional 2 months before you get limited versus you took one that was that far outside the rest of the market and they clearly know that you're using software to make profitable bets and you get limited within 2 days versus 2 months. And in this case, you might even say, hey, 15%, even that's high, and you want to avoid that. Me personally, I took the 15% because I'm already limited on DraftKings along with every single other book in Virginia. So for me, it doesn't really matter. I'll just put down as much money as I can get on it. And my final tip is going to be to avoid getting emotional when doing EV betting. And the reason is, and I showed it to you in the graph, you're going to have down days, weeks, sometimes even months. Last month I had my first ever negative month doing positive EV betting. But you have to keep a cool and calm head and stick with the process because in the long run you're going to make money. If you are constantly adjusting what you are doing and the settings that you have and your bankroll size, you're more often than not going to struggle to have winning days and have winning days long term. So just stick with the process. Don't worry about bad days, bad weeks, bad months. If you have like 3 bad months in a row, I would be concerned. But a bad month, maybe even 2, not that big of a deal because in the long run, you are going to make money. If you feel like it is becoming too emotional for you, or you are scared away by the prospect that you could be losing money rather than making money every single day, I recommend checking out my arbitrage video, which I'll have linked. Just doing a quick looky here at it. If we just go and look at this one, you're guaranteed no matter what by betting both sides to make a guaranteed either $3 or $12. So if your risk tolerance is really low or you're just in a bad headspace, you're feeling too emotional from the upswings and downswings from positive EV betting, check out my arbitrage video. And with that, I'm going to end this video. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments and I will make sure to respond to them. Again, my link is going to be in the description. And if you use the link in the description, it's going to give you a week-long free trial. And on top of that, if you decide to keep using it after that week-long free trial, it's also going to give you 50% off your first month. And what you'll see is that price for the first month is going to be $250. And this price for some people initially turns them off. What I always tell people is take advantage of the week-long free trial. You should easily be able to make that $250 in the first week. So use that week-long free trial to make the money that's going to pay for your month's subscription. And if for some reason you're unable to make that $250 in your first week during that week-long free trial and you decide it's not worth it for you, that's okay. You don't have to sign up for that month-long subscription afterwards. So don't be turned away by this price that shows up. Take advantage of the week-long free trial. There's no harm in it. And from that week-long free trial, evaluate if it's worth your money or not. And in addition to taking advantage of the sportsbooks through positive EV betting, I'll also have a bunch of other videos on my YouTube channel showing you how you can make additional money from the sportsbooks. And with that, go out there and take that money from the sportsbooks.